Quality assurance has changed a lot over the past decade. What once meant mainly manual testing has now gradually evolved into something much bigger, with automation, performance, security, and even AI-assisted testing becoming a part of our daily work. But one question keeps coming up. What does it actually mean to become a great QA engineer? In this episode, we have our senior QA engineer, Asmir, talking to us about all of these topics. So let's hear what he has to say. Hello, Asmir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Leila. I have to say that this role suits you really well. The feedback from people who have seen your talks is really positive, so I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Thank you so much. That is so nice of you. So I will start with my first question, which is, you've been in the QA field for almost a decade now. What would you say feels different about this role now compared to when you first started?
Testing at its core is still the same. How we approach testing and how we think, the mindset, looking for edge cases, exploring the apps and stuff is still the same, those fundamentals. But what has changed from my perspective is actually how we test. So today we have a lot of tool set that we can utilize, and the focus is pretty much on the speed. The business is pushing for fast delivery, agile methodologies, and all these changes, now AI as well, comes into picture. So all these things made us rethink how we test, and test automation went from being optional to being essential. So I think that's the biggest difference.
There was a time when the QA meant mainly manual testing. Would you say that manual-only QA roles are slowly disappearing today?
No, I completely disagree. I have to say that personally, I don't like to categorize or split testing into manual and automation. I think these two things go along the way and together. They complement each other. And even if you do test automation properly, from my perspective and from my experience, you always start with some exploration, with some, let's call it, manual activities, right? So that's like the basics, that's the fundamentals, and there is no such thing like manual testing. It's just testing. But test automation brings some additional values in how we actually test, what I kind of refer in my previous answer. So definitely it won't disappear, and yeah. We should just take advantage of it.
I completely agree. So in our company, most QAs do both manual and automation work. So what would you say is the advantage of a QA who is comfortable in both worlds?
Test automation, or knowing test automation, doesn't make you a better tester, but it definitely makes you a more valuable team member. Today, test automation is kind of standard, so you really need to understand that. And what I referred previously, when I talked about the speed and fast delivery and everything, so test automation is crucial. So I think to shorten the feedback loop, to increase cadence of go live, I think test automation is kind of essential, but it doesn't rule out the other activities, which are, again, crucial.
Okay. Now I have a tricky question for you. If something can be tested in 5 minutes manually every day, what is the benefit of automating it?
Well, with automation, you can do it in seconds, even in milliseconds in many cases, and you can run it in multiple environments with different test data, with different input parameters. So there's plenty of options that you can do, and you can basically repeat it whenever you want. It also helps when it comes to the continuous integration, continuous deployment, where you have you don't lose time communicating with the team. When can I start testing? Is it ready? Is package deploy and stuff? So you can really integrate test automation into your way of working and get advantage of it. So should I continue, or have I convinced you?
No, I'm convinced. So let's be direct for a second. Yes. Is automation always the answer?
There are definitely situations where maybe test automation is not applicable. For example, if you're a startup and you're still in a pivoting phase, finding your way through. But in many other situations, especially for bigger enterprise and corporation environments, I think test automation is kind of crucial and should be part of our way of working, because it allows us, it's not that it just speeds things up, but it also allows us to focus more testing the product, let's call it manually, exploring the app and focusing on edge cases and so on.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you for your explanation. People often separate automation, performance, security, and different types of testing. But my question would be, how do all of these puzzle pieces fit together in our everyday testing?
Every type of testing has its own role. So, of course, test automation focuses on functional requirements, performance and security and non-functional requirements. So I think all these different activities helps us understand the state of our product better, which makes our decision making from the project management perspective much easier when it comes to the releasing our products.
Sooner or later, we had to run into this topic, frameworks. So what makes a good framework?
Well, it must be scalable. That's definitely a first thing. I think we touched upon this in our previous talk. It shouldn't be an overkill for a team to keep it up to date with all the product changes. Next, it must be stable, so we shouldn't accept test flakiness as such, no matter what's the reason. So we should really try to understand from where it's coming and try to solve it. Then definitely test parallelization, that's crucial in order to speed up the test execution. And also we need to consider who is going to work with the framework, who is going to use it. And also it kind of must be browser and operating system agnostic when it comes to running the tests.
Okay, valid point, but I'm sure that choosing a framework is not something that is random. What influences your decision when you're choosing one?
Well, I like to say that there is no perfect framework, but the framework that fits product needs the most. So I kind of take it from there. Of course, it's really important to understand the requirements first. What are we automating, and based on that to draw some conclusions. Also, the skill set of the team who is going to work with the framework is important, in a sense of choosing the right maybe programming language and right tool. Are they already maybe familiar with some toolset, etc. What's also important is the community, because if you are selecting a tool that has a wide community, it's going to make our life easier when it comes to different challenges that you're going to run into sooner or later. We talked about skill set. I think I mentioned that already. Parallelization, of course, that's also important. The tools that should support parallelization. And yeah, nowadays we have a lot of tools that are free, open source, but there are also some tools that require licensing. So if it's a requirement that we go for such a tool, it's important to really understand if that is really necessary, and yeah, maybe to go and opt for some open source tool set to reduce the cost. And maybe last but not least, integration with project management tools, which is also important when it comes to the framework development, and it can make your life easier in certain situations.
We should definitely keep that in mind. But as the number of tests grows, everything can become much harder to maintain and manage. Would you say that sometimes it is harder to actually keep the solution clean than creating it from scratch?
Well, when it comes to the test automation, maintenance is really crucial, and we should really put some effort to lower it as much as possible. So how to achieve that? Of course, you start with some foundations from the architectural perspective, and then you kind of build on top of that. So that's where most teams, I would say, fail, because at the start, you know, it looks easy, you navigate through the app, you click around, and the flow is there, but at some point, you start to slow down because you didn't take all the things into consideration at the beginning, which you should.
That makes a lot of sense, but what are some of your personal rules when it comes to keeping the automation sustainable when the number of tests increase? How often should a team refactor their code?
My personal rule is simple: quality over quantity, always. Teams often fall into trap chasing the numbers and chasing the test coverage, but focus should really be on the current task, current script. Don't accept flakiness and get it done before moving on. So if you apply that discipline from the very start, refactoring becomes much less of a thing.
So now that we've discussed automation becoming a part of our everyday work, let's say there is a client who has zero automation in their way of working. What would their first step be?
Well, I always start with some background and some basics. in a way to explain what test automation is, on which test levels we can have it and run it, what each test level brings in terms of challenges. So I think that's like the first phase. After that, of course, from our side, from the implementation perspective, we need to understand the context. What are we going to automate? What's the application under test? What are the requirements? Are there any specific requirements, for example, operating systems that we need to support with our test automation? Maybe some browsers. Mm-hmm. Is it mobile, web, desktop app? And all these things which will, of course, help us to come up with a good solution.
Okay. I understand, but what would you absolutely avoid automating in the beginning?
I like to look at it from a different perspective. What are the things that we should automate and prioritize and focus on? And I kind of take it from there. Prioritization is, I would say, really important. No matter if you talk about, testing for a release, we need to prioritize the scope. We, of course, never run, and it doesn't make sense to run everything. And the same applies when it comes to test automation. So what are the things that we should really focus on? Of course, we can always start with some smoke suite, with some regression scope, with some maybe tests that takes a lot of time to check manually. But again, it all comes down to I would say requirements and also our expertise and our suggestion.
Okay, sounds great. So what does somebody really need to understand before jumping into automation? Is development knowledge mandatory, programming, or something else?
Well, I always like to say that test automation is a combination of both testing and programming skill set. You need to be up to speed with both to be successful, to come up with successful solutions. But even though programming skills are important, testing frameworks and solutions, I would say, are easier and from the architectural perspective, easier to develop and maintain compared to, for example, some, of course, dev solutions. But with this said, I think that most folks should be on testing itself, because if you don't have that mindset, if you don't have that thinking that testing should bring, then your test automation solution won't be useful in a couple of weeks or months. You won't scale it. Won't be able to scale it.
But let's imagine somebody who's listening to this has never written a single automated test. Where should they start? Like, is it a course, documentation? What would you recommend?
Well, definitely education is important. So my first recommendation would be educate yourself first about testing, learn about testing, and after that you move on to programming, getting up to speed with programming skills, learn one programming language, learn one test automation tool, and of course, crucial aspect is hands-on experience. So the industry, it's like that it offers you possibilities to do a lot of things yourself, and you can practice a lot. You can, of course, watch different courses, whatever, but hands-on experience is really crucial in here. Okay,
I need some advice from you now. How would you design an automation solution that scales well, that does not require massive refactoring after 6 months or so?
Well, I always like to say that test automation must be scalable. Sometimes it's kind of hard to define what that means, but I like to say that it shouldn't be an overkill to maintain and to expand your solution. What does this mean? This means that when you're bringing in new features, when you're changing flows, doing some updates on the system, it shouldn't take you a lot of time to maintain and to expand your test automation solution. I think good advice that maybe I can give is when you're writing test scripts, because test automation itself, I would say, it's not easy, but it's also not hard. There are tools that you can use, and they have kind of defined set of rules that you can, interact. Let's put it into perspective of automating a web app. You have a tool that allows you to communicate with the browser and lets you navigate through the system. So these things, I would say, are easy to learn. But where's the challenge is when you start writing the scripts. And to get back to my advice, what I wanted to say before is that whenever you when you script some actions, ask yourself a question, is there anything that can break my flow? So are there any permissions, user roles that this action will break for certain roles? Are there any test data or environment things that I need to take into consideration? Can I run this test in multiple environments? Because that's where the flakiness comes. Mm-hmm. And I also like to say that focus is too much on test flakiness in a way that we should, rerun our tests, focuses too much on the locators itself. But I think if test is flaky, then it means that it's a poorly developed. So we need to take action on it.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. And it's really nice to hear these thoughts from somebody who has so much experience in the field.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
I want to talk about the elephant in the room now. So I will ask the big question. Will AI replace QA engineers?
Well, I don't want to make any bold statements about the future, but what I'm seeing today is that AI cannot replace a QA engineer. However, that doesn't mean that we should not use it, quite the opposite. First, find a use case where you can apply it, and once you have that, go ahead and implement it. Faster delivery is definitely there, but it comes with a price if you don't check and don't guide the AI outputs. Those who understand how LLMs work will understand what I mean.
Okay, it's really nice to hear that. But what advice would you give to someone who is already working in QA? How can they adjust and prepare for this new change that is coming?
The more we know about our domain, the better. We cannot rely completely on AI-generated outputs, and this forces us to be better at what we do on a daily basis. Understanding why something fails, knowing context, and making judgment calls, this is still a human effort, and that's exactly where deep domain knowledge pays off. So educate yourself about the things you work on a daily basis, and equally important, educate yourself about AI, how it works and how you can maximize its capabilities.
It's really nice to hear that, but in your experience, where can AI genuinely boost our productivity in our daily work? Are there cases where the benefits of AI are not worth the time that it will take to integrate it in our work?
I see a lot of talk about test generation, but I'm honestly not convinced that we can have much value there, because it takes a lot of context to get meaningful test outcomes. Where I see most concrete and immediate effect is if we apply it integrate it into test automation, coding specifically. You can significantly increase delivery speed and productivity. It tends to work better for senior engineers because they can lead the way, make judgments, and orchestrate the implementation rather than blindly following and accepting the AI-generated outputs.
Okay, but let's say a team wants to start using AI in their QA process. What would be the best entry point for that?
Get a license, coordinated and approved by your company or client, of course, and invest time in learning how to use it properly. Think of it as a new tool in your day-to-day work, but before you roll it out in your team, make sure that there are at least some basic guidelines, for example, security guidelines in terms of what to share and what not to share with AI. That responsible foundation is what separates a thoughtful rollout from the one where we create new problems by solving old ones.
I guess my last question for you would be, in 5 years from now, what will differentiate a great QA from an average one in this AI-driven world? And how should we prepare for an AI-driven future?
Well, focus on education, and I mean it in the broader sense. Learn how AI works, how you can utilize it, how you can maximize its capabilities without jeopardizing quality. In 5 years, I believe everyone will have access to AI, but we should not let it dictate how we use it. We should never lose sight of our own judgment and expertise, and we should really tend to work with it on our own terms.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for spending some quality time with us, Asmir. Sounds like we're ready for the future. Are you?